It was a quiet night in the house, the kind where you can hear the creak of the floorboards and the hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. I sat in the living room, the dim light casting shadows across the room, highlighting the pictures of her. My wife. She'd been gone for almost a year now, but the space she left behind was still as fresh as ever. I didn't need any reminders of her. I knew she was gone, but the ache of her absence lingered in everything. The old furniture, the pictures, even the small glass case that sat on the mantel, where we used to keep things of importance like the necklace, the one she gave me. I've never been good at handling loss. I keep things to myself, bury it under layers of routine. I guess it's easier that way. But that necklace, that was a part of her, a gift, a symbol of everything we shared, the life we fought for, the years of struggle, the years of love, and the years of silence when words weren't enough. It wasn't just gold and pearls. It was her, and it was me. I hadn't even realized it at first. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't searching the way I used to when we were together, always looking for her smile, her hand, the way she would speak my name. But that night, something made me look at the glass case on the mantel, and it was empty. My heart sank. I reached up to check again. No, it was gone. The place where it had always rested. Empty. I sat back down, feeling the air change in the room. I could hear the soft tap of my fingers against the chair's armrest, a sound I never really noticed before. My son walked in, his face trying to hide something, his usual smile a little strained. "Where's the necklace?" I asked him, trying to keep my voice steady. He paused, his eyes darting around before he gave me a weak grin. "What necklace?" "The one your mother gave me," I said, my heart racing. "The one that used to be right there." He shifted on his feet, looking uncomfortable. "Dad, I don't know. Maybe you misplaced it." "Misplaced it?" I stood up, frustration beginning to seep through. "That necklace has been in that case for years. How could I misplace it?" He hesitated, and that hesitation spoke volumes. I could see it now. He knew something. I could see it in his eyes. Before I could say another word, his wife, my daughter-in-law, walked into the room. She had a cold smile, the kind that never quite reached the eyes. "Is everything okay?" she asked, but I could tell by the way her voice dropped, she knew what I was asking about. "Where's the necklace?" I asked again, more forcefully this time. She sighed, her eyes flickering with something that looked like guilt, but quickly masked by an air of indifference. "I sold it," she said flatly. My mind raced. "Sold it." You sold it?" She didn't flinch, didn't even seem to care that she had just torn apart something that had meant so much to me. "Yeah," she replied. "We needed the money. For my trip to Paris." A cold rush of anger washed over me, but I was too stunned to speak. She continued as if I should understand. "I needed it for a secret life, the one nobody knows about. Paris. The trip she took with her mistress, the one I had never known about until now. I had been so blind, so stupid. I stared at her, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. The necklace, the one thing I had left that connected me to her, had been sold for some selfish, meaningless trip. My chest tightened. The betrayal hit harder than I had expected. "How could you?" I whispered, almost to myself. "I did what I had to do," she said, shrugging as though it were nothing. "You don't understand." No, I didn't understand. I was too old, too tired to try. But something stirred inside me, something that hadn't been awake for years. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to make her feel what I was feeling, make her understand the weight of what she had done. But instead, I stood there silent, watching her, feeling the sting of her actions. And then, just as I thought I might collapse from the weight of it all, the phone rang. It was the dealership. "Mr. Williams," the voice on the other end said, "there's something inside the box you might want to see." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. What did this have to do with anything? What could possibly be inside that box that could change what had just happened? I didn't know yet, but I was going to find out. The moment I hung up, I felt a shift within me. The anger and betrayal began to take shape into something more focused, more calculated. This wasn't just about a necklace. This was about dignity. This was about respect. It was time to get what I had lost. And I wasn't going to wait any longer. I was still sitting there staring at the phone, replaying what had just happened. The room felt heavy with silence. It was the kind of silence that settled deep into your bones. The revelation about the necklace, my wife's final gift to me, was still fresh, raw. My heart was aching from the betrayal, my blood boiling from the audacity of it all. It was hard to process, even harder to accept that the woman I had called family, the woman who had lived under this roof for years, could do something like this. To sell something that meant so much to me, something my late wife had given me, just to fund her own secret life. I stood up from the couch, pacing back and forth in the dim-lit living room. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating me with the weight of it all. The floor creaked beneath me, almost in rhythm with the thoughts racing in my head. What did she think? That she could just take something so precious and get away with it? My hand instinctively reached for the old, faded picture on the wall, a photo of my wife and me on our wedding day. We were young, full of dreams and so much in love. I hadn't realized how much I missed her until now. The grief of losing her had never really gone away. It just lingered. And now, this, the betrayal from someone who should have been family. I was still lost in thought when the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. It was the dealership, the same place my daughter-in-law had sold the necklace. I answered quickly, almost too quickly, as if I could somehow outrun the wave of emotions crashing over me. "Mr. Williams?" The voice on the other end was calm, but there was an undertone of urgency. "This is James from the dealership. I need you to come down here. There's something you need to see." I felt a jolt of confusion. "What is it? What's this about? Please, just come by as soon as you can. It's about the necklace. We found something inside the box that you should know." The words hit me like a freight train. Something inside the box. My thoughts raced. What could possibly be inside? Why hadn't anyone mentioned anything about this before? My mind kept circling back to the fact that my daughter-in-law had sold it. But now, this call, this unexpected turn, pulled me in a different direction. Something told me this wasn't just about a necklace. There was more to this than I had realized. "All right," I said, my voice steady but my stomach in knots. "I'll be there in a few." I hung up the phone, staring at it for a moment, trying to piece together what I was about to walk into. My mind was swirling, but I felt a flicker of something else too. Curiosity. A spark. Maybe this was the key to uncovering what was really going on. I didn't waste time. I grabbed my coat from the chair by the door, not even bothering to think about how I felt about my son or his wife anymore. This was about something bigger now. It was about the truth. I wasn't going to let the moment pass without getting to the bottom of it. The dealership wasn't far, just a short drive from my house, but it felt like the longest trip I'd ever taken. The city passed by in a blur as I drove through the familiar streets, each one a reminder of the life I'd built, the struggles I had faced, and now, the betrayal. I couldn't focus on the road. My mind kept drifting back to that phone call. What did James mean by something inside the box? Was it a mistake? A coincidence? I pulled into the dealership parking lot and parked, trying to calm the storm inside me. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The dealership was a small, family-owned business, nestled in the heart of the city. The building itself was old but well-kept, its brick exterior weathered but proud. I walked in, the door chiming as I entered. The owner, a well-dressed black man in his 50s, was waiting for me. He had a look of sympathy in his eyes, though it wasn't quite enough to mask the curiosity. He knew this was bigger than just a necklace. "Mr. Williams," he said, offering his hand, "thank you for coming." I shook his hand, still unsure of what to expect. "You said something was in the box. What's this about?" He motioned toward the counter where the box lay, untouched. My gaze fell on it, and for a second, it felt like the weight of the world was on it. The same box my daughter-in-law had handed over, as though it were just another object to pawn off. James opened the box slowly, and I leaned in, my heart pounding. Inside, there was the necklace, the one my wife had given me, but beneath it, carefully folded, was a letter. "This was inside," James said, his voice low. "It was tucked in there, folded up real tight." I reached for the letter, my hands trembling slightly. I unfolded it, and as I began to read, I felt a lump rise in my throat. The letter was from my wife. She had written it years ago, long before her passing. My heart raced as I read her words. "My love," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then something has happened. I need you to know that this necklace isn't just a token of our love. It's more than that. It's a safeguard, a way to ensure our family's future in case anything goes wrong. You must keep it safe. Don't let anyone take it, not even me." The words hit me like a punch. My chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. She knew. She knew something I hadn't even suspected. My wife had discovered a betrayal within the family, but she kept it hidden from me to protect me from the pain. She had used the necklace, not just as a symbol of her love, but as a shield for our family's security. Tears welled in my eyes, but I wiped them away quickly. I wasn't going to break down now. Not after everything. And not after the years of struggling to keep things together. The letter continued, detailing how the family's financial security was tied to the necklace and how it had been meant to protect us all. The realization hit me hard. My daughter-in-law's actions had violated my wife's final wishes. She had stolen more than just a piece of jewelry. She had stolen my wife's legacy, our family's security. I set the letter down, my hands still shaking. I looked at James, who seemed to understand the weight of what I had just read. I need to know everything, I said, my voice firm. I need to understand how this happened. What went wrong? James nodded, his face somber. I'll help you, he said, but this is just the beginning. I woke up that morning with a heavy weight on my chest. The events of the past few days had taken a toll on me, and the anger still burned in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that had settled deep into my bones. The necklace. My wife's necklace. It was gone, sold without my consent, without my knowledge. And all for what? To fund her trip, a trip that had been kept a secret from me for too long. It didn't sit right. Nothing did. But I wasn't going to be passive anymore. No, not this time. I spent the morning rehearsing what I would say when I confronted my son and his wife. What would I say to them? How would I make them understand the gravity of what they had done? I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't let them think that they could walk all over me. I wasn't some fool that could just be tossed aside when it was convenient for them. As I walked around my living room, my hand brushed the old photographs that hung on the walls. One of them caught my eye. My wife and I, holding hands on our wedding day, smiling like we had the whole world ahead of us. I swallowed hard. The weight of the past hung over me like a shroud. My wife had given me that necklace, a symbol of our love, of everything we had built together. And now my daughter-in-law had taken that away from me. The pain in my chest flared again, but I pushed it down. This wasn't the time to break. No, this was the time to stand up, to assert myself. I wasn't the old man they thought I was, the one who would just quietly take whatever was thrown at him. I had my dignity, and it was time to reclaim it. I was still rehearsing my words when the phone rang. I didn't expect the call, but I answered anyway. "Mr. Williams," a voice on the other end said. It was the dealership owner, the same man who had called me earlier. "Yes, this is him." "What's this about?" I asked, my voice steady but tinged with irritation. "I've got something here that you need to see. It's about the necklace." I froze for a second, my heart leaping into my throat. "What is it?" I asked, though I already had a feeling this was no ordinary call. "There's something inside the box, something you should know. It could change everything." My pulse quickened. This wasn't just about a piece of jewelry anymore. There was something more, something I didn't know. I took a deep breath. "I'll be there in an hour," I said, hanging up the phone. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The drive to the dealership felt like it took forever. The streets of the city passed by in a blur, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What had I missed? Why was the necklace so important? And why hadn't anyone told me about this before? My anger, my frustration, they were building again, but I held it in. I had to. I needed answers. When I arrived, I walked into the dealership with purpose. James, the owner, was waiting for me, his face serious but not unfriendly. He motioned for me to come over to the counter where the box sat. "This is what I wanted to show you," James said, opening the box slowly. The necklace was there, still gleaming under the light, but it was the letter beneath it that caught my eye. He handed it to me, his gaze steady. This was inside. I unfolded the letter carefully, my hands trembling. The handwriting was unmistakable, my wife's handwriting. My heart sank as I began to read. "My love, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong. I need you to know that the necklace is more than just a symbol of my love for you. It is a safeguard, a way to secure our future and protect you and our family. Please keep it safe. It is our safety net. And if anything happens to me, it must remain in our family's care. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. The necklace wasn't just a gift. It was a lifeline, a plan, a security measure. She had known something was coming, something I couldn't see, and she had prepared for it. But what was it? What had happened that she had kept hidden from me? The letter went on, detailing her reasons for keeping this secret, for keeping me in the dark. She had been protecting me, protecting us. But now, with the necklace gone, everything was at risk. My blood ran cold. James stood back, giving me space as I absorbed the words, the weight of them pressing down on me. I don't know the full story, but this letter changes everything, he said quietly. I folded the letter, the paper now creased and worn from my trembling hands. I stared at the box for a moment, my mind reeling. My wife had left me a message I couldn't ignore. She had hidden something from me, but she had also given me a way to protect what was ours. I stood up, ready to leave, but there was still so much I didn't know. And so many unanswered questions. But one thing was clear, I was going to get to the bottom of this. I walked out of the dealership, my mind made up. I couldn't just let this go. Not after everything. Not after my wife's final wish. I had to do something about it. And I wasn't going to wait any longer. The weight of everything that had happened over the past few days sat heavy on my chest as I sat in my worn armchair, staring at the empty space in front of me. The house felt colder than usual, the silence more profound. The betrayal still simmered, but something else had begun to take its place, a feeling I hadn't expected. It was power. For the first time in a long while, I was ready to take control. I wasn't just the passive man I had been before. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I had spent hours alone with my thoughts, replaying the conversations, the lies, the moments when I allowed myself to be ignored, disrespected. There was no going back. No pretending things could go back to how they were before. Not after what they did. Not after my daughter-in-law, with her cold indifference, had sold my wife's necklace, the one thing that was supposed to bind us together, a symbol of a love that had lasted decades. I knew what I had to do. I'd had enough. I wasn't just fighting for the necklace anymore, though that was part of it. I was fighting for my dignity, for my place in my family. I thought about the words I wanted to say, the accusations I needed to make. I had to make them understand the full weight of what they had done. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my old friend, Harry. We'd been through thick and thin together, and while I hadn't been close with many people in my life, Harry was one man I trusted. "Harry, it's me," I said when he answered. "Reggie, my man, how you holding up?" His voice was warm, but there was an edge of concern beneath it. I could hear the faint sound of his wife talking in the background, but he put her on mute as he focused on me. "I've had better days, that's for sure. But I think I'm done sitting on the sidelines, Harry." I let the words sink in. I'm going to confront them. My son, his wife. I can't let this slide. Not anymore. Harry was quiet for a moment, then he spoke, his voice steady. "I don't need to tell you, Reggie, but I will. You've been good to them. Too good, maybe, but you got to put yourself first now. Your dignity. You can't let them keep disrespecting you like this. Whatever happens, hold your ground. You deserve more than this." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew he was right. I'd spent too many years trying to keep the peace, trying to appease everyone else. But at what cost? My dignity, my wife's memory. "I appreciate that, Harry. I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago." "Good man," he said. "Take care of yourself, Reggie. And remember, you ain't alone in this." We hung up, and I sat back in my chair, staring at the walls, trying to steady my breath. The weight of the conversation with Harry didn't give me the answers I was looking for, but it gave me something more. The confidence to do what I should have done a long time ago. The phone rang again, pulling me out of my thoughts. This time it wasn't Harry. It was a call I didn't expect. "Reggie?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but I recognized the tone. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Marcus. You don't know me, but I've got something that might interest you." I sat up straight, my pulse quickening. "What do you want?" "Listen, I'm not sure what you know, but there's more to this whole thing with the necklace than meets the eye. You might want to hear me out." The words sent a chill through my spine. "What are you talking about?" "I've got information," Marcus continued. about some things that happened a while ago. Things in your family. Things you don't know about. I gripped the phone tighter. You've got my attention. What is it? Meet me at the corner of 5th and Chestnut in an hour. I'll explain everything. But be careful who you trust, Reggie. You've got more enemies in your family than you realize. The line went dead before I could respond. What was that all about? Enemies in my family. This was getting deeper than I ever imagined. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I knew one thing. I wasn't backing down. Whatever Marcus had to say, I needed to hear it. There were too many unanswered questions, too many secrets, and now it felt like they were all crashing down on me. I stood up, pulled on my jacket, and headed out the door, my mind racing. As I walked through the streets of the city, everything around me felt sharper, more alive. My steps were heavy with purpose. I wasn't just walking toward a street corner. I was walking toward the truth. When I arrived, Marcus was already there, standing near a rundown coffee shop. He looked like a man who had been through a lot, the kind of person you didn't want to mess with. "You're Reggie, right?" he asked, his voice low. "That's me," I said, scanning the area, making sure no one was around. He nodded and led me to a bench nearby. "I don't have much time. Your family's been hiding something from you. There's a lot more going on with that necklace than you know." I felt my heart skip. "What do you mean?" "There are people who've been using your family's financial situation for their own gain. And that necklace? It was part of a much bigger plan, one that your daughter-in-law didn't tell you about." My head spun. This was more than I could process in one conversation, but there was no denying it. Everything was coming to light. "I'll tell you more, but first you need to get a lawyer," Marcus said. "You're not going to like what you hear next." I could feel my blood run cold as I nodded. There was no turning back now. "I'll get the lawyer," I said, my voice steady, but the weight of it all threatened to swallow me whole. Marcus handed me an envelope. "This will help. I've done what I can. And the rest is up to you." I looked at him, then at the envelope. What was inside? What other secrets were waiting to be uncovered? I couldn't stand the waiting. "What's next?" "You'll know soon enough," Marcus said cryptically. I walked away, my mind a blur. It was happening. The truth was finally unraveling, and I was ready to face it, whatever it took. The weight of the day pressed against my shoulders as I stood in the living room, preparing myself for the final confrontation. There was no turning back now. I had spent too long as the quiet observer in my own life, too long letting my family walk all over me. But today was different. Today, I would face them head on. The tension in the air was almost palpable. I could feel my pulse steadying, my heart pounding in anticipation of what was to come. I glanced around the room, the same old furniture, the faded photographs of my wife smiling at me, her face now haunting my every step. I could feel the familiar pang of loss settle in, but it wasn't the grief I needed to focus on anymore. This was about something much bigger than just me. It was about reclaiming the dignity that had been stripped away. My son and daughter-in-law would soon enter. I wasn't sure what their plan was, but I knew what mine was. I would lay it all out calmly and with purpose. This wasn't a fight for the necklace anymore. This was a fight for my place in this family, for my own peace. I had gathered every bit of information I could, every shred of truth. There would be no more secrets, no more pretending that everything was okay. I had let them get away with too much, and now they would face the consequences. The door creaked open, and my son stepped in, followed closely by his wife. They both looked uneasy, glancing at each other, perhaps unsure of what to expect. My son tried to meet my eyes, but I could see the guilt swimming there. The daughter-in-law, however, held herself with a defiant posture, eyes cold and unyielding. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply motioned for them to sit. As they did, I took a breath and spoke, my voice calm yet steady. "I've come to understand a lot over the past few days," I began, "and it's time for the truth to be known. Not just for me, but for her." I pointed to the picture of my wife on the wall, a silent witness to everything. "You sold her necklace, the one she gave to me, the one that symbolized everything we built together." The words hung in the air. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to raise my voice. The silence in the room spoke volumes. My son shifted uncomfortably, but his wife only smirked, arms crossed. "I've heard enough of your excuses," I continued, looking directly at my daughter-in-law. "This isn't just about a piece of jewelry. This is about disrespecting her memory and disrespecting me. You think this was just a necklace? Think again." The room went silent. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, cutting her off. "You've crossed a line. I've sat back for years, watching you both, but no more." Before she could speak again, the phone rang. I picked it up without hesitation, still watching them both. "Reggie?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar but urgent. "This is Marcus. You need to hear something. Something that'll turn everything upside down." I turned my attention away from them for just a moment. "What are you talking about?" "I've got a piece of information about your daughter-in-law, something that'll make everything make sense. Meet me at the usual spot, I'll explain." I hung up, and the tension in the room shifted. My son, looking more concerned now, leaned forward. "Who was that?" "It's none of your business," I said, my voice low but unwavering. "I've had enough of the lies. Your wife's actions have set something in motion, something I won't let slide. You think you can just sell a piece of her heart and not face the consequences?" The daughter-in-law shifted in her seat, her composure starting to crack. She opened her mouth to speak, but my son cut her off. "Dad, look. I was wrong. I didn't know what she was doing, but I should have. I should have stopped her." "You should have?" I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. "You should have?" I let the words hang in the air, heavy and bitter. "You've known for months, haven't you?" He hesitated before admitting, "Yeah, but I didn't know what to do. I was weak." "Damn right you were weak," I muttered, barely above a whisper. "I've been weak too, haven't I? But not anymore." The daughter-in-law glared at me, a sneer curling on her lips. "This is all about control, isn't it? You've been trying to control everything for years." I stood up, my hand slamming on the table. "You're damn right it's about control. I've been trying to control what little I had left after she passed. And you took it from me. You think I'm going to let you destroy what's left of my family, my wife's legacy?" The daughter-in-law's face contorted with rage, but my son stood up as well, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry, Dad. I never meant for things to get this far. I didn't know she'd go this far." I felt the familiar weight of exhaustion settle on my chest, but something in me shifted. Maybe it was the years of feeling powerless, of sitting in silence. Maybe it was the truth finally coming to light. I wasn't going to let this happen anymore. "Don't apologize," I said. "Apologies don't fix things. They don't bring her back. They don't fix what you did to me, to her." I paused, taking a deep breath. "But I'll tell you one thing. I'm not done. This isn't over. There's more to this than you think." The phone rang again. I ignored it for a moment, but when I glanced at the screen, I saw the name. Marcus. "Excuse me," I said, walking away from the table. "I'll be back in a moment. We're not done here." I answered the phone, my heart pounding. "Reggie," Marcus said, "I've got something that'll change everything, but you need to be ready. There's more than you think." I hung up the phone and turned back to my family. I couldn't keep this bottled up anymore. "Listen to me," I said, my voice firm. "There are things you don't know about. There's more at play here, and I'm going to find out what it is, no matter what." I walked out the door, my mind racing, but something in me was resolute. This was the breaking point. Everything was about to change. The family gathered around the dinner table, but the usual chatter and laughter were absent. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My hands, steady as ever, gripped the edges of the table. I had been silent for too long. No more. I looked at each of them, sitting there, uneasy, as they felt the weight of the moment. They knew, they all knew. The time for pretending was over. The time for silence was over. I had been too passive, too patient, but not anymore. My wife's memory, my dignity, my place in this family. I was done being the overlooked, invisible man. With a deep breath, I stood up, pushing the chair back with purpose. The room went still. "Enough," I said, the calm in my voice betraying the storm I felt inside. "It's time we face the truth." I could feel the heaviness of their eyes on me, expectant, uncertain. I didn't need to shout to make them listen. My silence had been loud enough for years, but now it was my turn to speak. I started with the necklace, my wife's pearl necklace, the one they took from me, the one that was never meant to be sold. "I know about the necklace," I said quietly, looking at my son first, then his wife. I know everything. The lies. The betrayal. The silence in the room deepened. My daughter-in-law's face twitched, her posture stiff. She was trying to maintain control, but I saw it. The guilt. My son shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. I've gathered enough information to know that the only thing that's been hidden in this family is truth, I continued, and I'm not here to let you all hide anymore. The daughter-in-law opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. The son shifted, his discomfort growing, but there was more. I wasn't finished yet. The truth is, I pressed, you two thought I wouldn't find out, but I did. You sold it, my wife's memory. And for what? So she could keep up with her selfish life, leaving me in the dust? I took a step forward, my voice firm but not raised. You don't get to take from me anymore. It was quiet, but not for long. She was about to speak when the phone rang. It wasn't expected, but I picked it up. Reggie? The voice on the other end was deep, low. It's Marcus. I've got something for you. Something that'll make all of this make sense. I held the phone to my ear, watching my family. They were all in shock, trying to keep their composure, but they knew. The game had changed. I'll be there, I said, ending the call quickly. I didn't look back at them. I was done with the pleasantries. I had something to do. I know the truth, I said, my eyes locking with my son's. And now you're going to hear it. I'm not some fool you can walk all over. Dad, please, my son finally spoke, his voice full of regret. I didn't know she'd go that far. I don't care what you knew, I snapped. You knew enough. You've always known enough. His guilt was evident, but there was more to this than just him. The daughter-in-law, who had tried to keep her distance, finally spoke. This is about control, isn't it? She said, her voice cold and sharp. You just can't stand not being in control. Always pulling the strings, always trying to be the one in charge. Her words hit hard, but not harder than I expected. I had seen her act like this for years. Manipulative, calculating. I was done with it. No, I said, my voice quieter but stronger. This is about respect. Something you've never given me. Something you'll never take from me again. It was her turn to be uncomfortable. She couldn't keep the mask on anymore. I had broken through, and now the truth was coming out. But there was still more. I wasn't done yet. I wasn't just confronting them. I was claiming my life back. I don't care about your excuses anymore, I said, staring at both of them. You're not the victims here. I am. And then the bombshell dropped. My son, in an attempt to redeem himself, stood up. I knew she was manipulating me. I was blind, Dad. I didn't see what was happening until it was too late. My heart sank. All these years I had been blind too. But I knew it didn't matter now. It was too far gone. I never wanted any of this, he said, his voice faltering. But I can't change what's been done. And neither can I replied, my voice steady. But I'm done being a part of this broken thing. I'm done being your punching bag. And then it was her turn. She looked at me, her eyes cold, then softened, as if she had expected something else. I'm sorry, she said, but I could hear the hollowness in her words. I never meant for it to get this far. Save it, I shot back. You sold it for your own gain, and now you expect me to just forget, to let it slide. It's too late for that. The silence that followed was thick. I could feel their eyes on me, but I wasn't going to waver. You'll never get another chance to take from me again, I said. I'm done with this. I'm done with all of you. My son's face twisted with pain. Dad, please don't go. I'm not going to beg you, I said. You're going to have to live with the choices you made. And with that, I left. I walked out the door, leaving them to deal with their mess. But before I could get too far, I pulled the legal document from my pocket. The one that would ensure no one could ever touch my wife's legacy again. I'd secured it. I'd taken control. As I turned to leave, I felt the weight of it all. But I knew there was still more to come. I walked to the park, to gather my thoughts, to find peace. As I sat on the bench, I pulled out the necklace, feeling its weight in my hands. It was both a symbol of the past and my future. I had lost so much, but I had gained something too. My respect. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar face appeared in the distance. A friend. A voice from the past. You're not done yet, he said as he approached. I've got something you need to hear. There's more to this story than you know." My heart raced. I wasn't sure I was ready for this, but there was no turning back now. I sat in my living room looking at the photos that lined the walls, the faces of my family, my wife, my children, frozen in time, captured in happier days. But those days felt distant now. The weight of everything I had sacrificed for them, for their happiness, settled heavily on my shoulders. But this time, I wasn't going to let it define me anymore. I was no longer the man I once was, the man who silently endured and hoped for change. The decision had been made. No more second guessing, no more apologies, no more silence. The legal documents were in hand, and my lawyer had prepared everything. There were no loose ends this time. I was done being passive. I was going to take control, once and for all. I thought about the long road that led me here. The years of trying to make my family understand, the sacrifices I made, the countless times I let things slide in the hopes that one day they'd see the man I used to be. But now, that man was gone, replaced by someone who demanded respect. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, my dignity, my peace, and my future. As I sat there reflecting, I felt something shift inside of me. A letter from my late wife caught my eye, one I had never read before. It had been tucked away in a drawer for years. I unfolded it carefully. Her words were soft yet powerful. She had known I would face this moment one day. She had always known, and now, in her absence, it was up to me to fulfill what she had quietly believed in. Her words made it clear. "You are strong, Reggie. Don't let anyone take that from you." The message hit me like a tidal wave. She had believed in me when I had lost belief in myself. Her words weren't just comforting, they were a call to action. I wiped the tear that had formed at the corner of my eye and stood up. It was time. I dialed my lawyer. "It's happening," I said, my voice steady but with a new resolve. "Everything's in place." The doorbell rang just as I was about to hang up. I looked at the clock. It was time. The family was gathered in the dining room, tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. I walked in, not with anger, but with quiet determination. My son and daughter-in-law exchanged uneasy glances, knowing this wasn't going to be a typical conversation. They could feel the change in me. "I'm done being quiet," I said, my voice calm but commanding. "We're going to talk about everything." They looked at me in silence, waiting for me to continue. I laid the documents on the table. My son's eyes widened as he saw the legal papers. "This is where we are now," I continued. "You've been lying to me, manipulating me for years, and I'm done with it." The room felt colder with each word. The daughter-in-law's face twisted in disbelief, but she kept silent. My son shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his remorse evident, but not enough to undo the damage he'd caused. "I've been patient long enough," I said, "but not anymore. I'm taking legal action. Everything you've done, every lie will be accounted for. This family and my wife's legacy are mine to protect." The daughter-in-law opened her mouth, but the words were hesitant. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "What I don't understand is how you've lived with yourselves, how you've used me as a stepping stone for your own desires. The money you sold from that necklace, the betrayal of my wife's memory, it ends here." The daughter-in-law tried to defend herself, her voice shaking. "I never wanted this to get out of hand. I thought it would fix things." "You thought?" I repeated, my voice cold. "That's the problem with you. You never think about anyone but yourself." My son finally spoke, his voice strained. "Dad, I never knew it would go this far. I didn't realize how deep it was until now." I shook my head, staring him down. "No, you didn't realize because you've been blinded. You've been manipulated just like I was. And now you have to make a choice." His eyes darted between me and her. The conflict in him was clear. "What do you want me to say?" he whispered. "I want you to decide. Who do you stand with, your wife or your father? Because you can't have both." The silence was unbearable. It felt like the world was holding its breath. My son's shoulders slumped as the weight of my words hit him. He was caught between loyalty and love, but the lines had been drawn. The stakes were too high. Finally, he stood. I've been living a lie," he said, his voice cracking. "I've been afraid to lose her, but I can't lose you too. I choose you, Dad." I nodded, my chest tight. I had hoped for this moment, but it didn't make it easier. There was no celebration, just a painful acknowledgement of everything we'd lost to get here. But the fight wasn't over yet. I turned to my daughter-in-law, who had remained quiet through most of the exchange. She had no more defenses left. "I won't forgive you," I said. "Not because I don't want to, but because forgiveness doesn't mean accepting what you've done. You've crossed a line and now there are consequences." I left the house, my son's pleading voice echoing behind me. The finality of it all was heavy, but I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had done what I needed to do. Outside, I walked to the park, the weight of the necklace in my pocket. It was all that was left of her, and now it symbolized something more. My power, my decision to walk away from the chains that had bound me for too long. But just as I was about to leave the park, a figure approached. It was an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in years. "Reggie, you've got to listen to this," he said, his voice urgent. "There's more to your wife's legacy than you know, something that could change everything." My heart skipped a beat. I was done with secrets. But there it was, the last piece of the puzzle. I froze, the phone in my hand, the words hanging in the air. "What do you mean, a secret legacy?" I walked into the room with a calm resolve that I hadn't felt in years. The air was thick with tension, the kind you could cut with a knife. My family, gathered once again, sat there with a mixture of guilt, uncertainty, and fear. They knew this was it. This wasn't just another heated conversation. This was the reckoning, the moment where everything came to light. I stood before them, the weight of years of betrayal and manipulation pressing down on me. No longer the passive, silent figure I had been, I was ready to speak my truth, loud and clear. My voice, steady but firm, echoed in the room as I laid it all out. "You've lied to me for too long. You've used me, manipulated me, and broken the trust I once had in this family. The necklace, the deceit, the betrayal of my late wife's memory, it ends today." The shock on their faces was like a slap in the face, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't backing down. I had spent too many years letting things slide, hoping it would change, but now I was done. My son looked like he was about to speak, but I wasn't done yet. "You didn't just hurt me," I continued. "You dishonored everything I worked for, everything your mother worked for. I didn't just lose a necklace. I lost my place in this family, my dignity. But today, that ends." The silence that followed was deafening. My daughter-in-law, sitting across from me, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. She could try to act composed, but I saw right through her. I turned to my son, the man who had once been my pride. "And you," I said, my voice soft but edged with bitterness. "You stood by and let this happen. I raised you to protect what was ours, to honor our family, but instead you chose to turn a blind eye." The weight of my words seemed to crush him. He looked like he wanted to speak, but his lips trembled, caught in the web of his own guilt. I could see him wrestling with himself, torn between his loyalty to his wife and the man who had given him everything. "Dad, he started, but I cut him off. "No more excuses, son. This is bigger than you and your wife. This is about respect. I've given you both my love and my support, and this is how you repay me?" He shook his head, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the boy I raised, the one who looked up to me. "I never meant to hurt you," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I was afraid of losing her, afraid of losing my place in the family." The words hung in the air, thick with regret. He wasn't just apologizing for what happened with the necklace. He was apologizing for a lifetime of mistakes. But it wasn't enough. It never would be. Before I could respond, my daughter-in-law, who had been sitting silently until now, stood up. "You don't get it," she snapped, her face contorted with anger. "This is about survival. I did what I had to do to secure our future. You think your legacy matters? Your money? You're selfish." Her words struck a nerve, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't the man I used to be, the one who would cower under the weight of their words. No, I had nothing left to lose. "Selfish?" I echoed, my voice dangerously calm. "You're the one who's selfish. You manipulated everyone here, twisted the truth to get what you wanted. You think I didn't see that? You think I didn't know?" She faltered, her anger faltering as the truth hit her square in the face. "I was just afraid," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to be left out. I didn't want to lose everything." "You already did," I said quietly. "You've lost it all." Her tears were a last-ditch attempt at a defense, but I wasn't moved. She had already crossed the line, and now she had to face the consequences. Then, just as I thought I had finally broken through the wall of lies, my son spoke again. "I've been living a lie," he confessed, his voice shaky. "I've always been afraid of her. I was afraid of losing her, and I let her control me. I never stood up for you, for the family. He stopped, his voice catching in his throat. "Now you know," I said softly. "You know what it means to live a lie. Now you have to choose your loyalty to her or your loyalty to me." The room was silent. I could see the turmoil in my son's eyes, the fear of making the wrong choice, the fear of losing both of us. But I wasn't giving him an out anymore. I wasn't giving him the chance to hide. "I choose you, Dad," he finally whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I've been blind." I nodded, but my heart was heavy. This wasn't a victory, this was a loss, a family broken beyond repair. But I had to stand firm. I had to reclaim what was mine. And I wasn't going to let them take any more from me. Turning to my daughter-in-law, I said, "I'm done. I'm done letting you tear this family apart. I'm done letting you manipulate us. You'll have no part in the future I'm building." With that, I pulled out the legal documents, the ones that sealed my decision. "I've made arrangements. Your mother's legacy is secure, and it's no longer yours to claim. This ends today." The look on her face was one of disbelief, but I wasn't going to be swayed. I stood up, ready to walk away from everything I had known. I had nothing left here. No family to return to, no home to cling to. All that remained was me and the future I was going to build for myself. Just as I turned to leave, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around to see an old friend standing there, a grim expression on his face. "Reggie," he said softly, "there's something else you need to know." My heart skipped a beat. I had been through enough for one day, but this had the potential to change everything. "What is it?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "This letter," he said, handing me an envelope. "It's from your lawyer. You won't believe what it says." I opened the letter, my eyes scanning the words. A secret. Another legacy. My late wife had kept something hidden, something that could change everything. My hand shook as I read the last line. "This changes everything," I muttered. The weight of truth hung heavy in the air as I sat in the quiet solitude of my living room, reflecting on everything that had happened. The family I had once tried so hard to keep together was now a fractured shell of what it had been. The confrontation, the pain, the betrayals, it all felt like a distant storm that had finally passed, leaving only the calm in its wake. I had made my decision, severing ties with my son and daughter-in-law. It wasn't easy. My heart ached, but my mind was clear. For years, I had carried their disrespect like a heavy burden. I thought that by being there for them, I could make things right. But now, I realized that the only thing I had been doing was holding on to a dream that wasn't real. I glanced at the framed photograph on the mantel, my late wife smiling, her warmth still radiating through the glass. We had built a life together, a life that was now being corrupted by lies and manipulation. She wouldn't have wanted this, wouldn't have wanted me to endure such disrespect. And I knew in my heart that she would be proud of the man I was becoming now, a man who wasn't afraid to stand up for himself. My son, once a boy I had raised with pride, had been a mirror of my own fears. I saw in him my own weaknesses, the tendency to forgive, to hope for change when change seemed impossible, but no more. His guilt and his confusion were real, but so was the damage he had done. He had allowed his wife to poison his judgment, to manipulate him into betraying not just me, but everything I had worked for. The daughter-in-law, on the other hand, was an enigma. At first, I had believed her actions were driven by selfishness, by greed, and perhaps, in part, they were. But as I looked back on the years, I began to see something else, something deeper. She had been afraid of losing everything. In her quest to secure her place in this family, she had lost sight of what really mattered, and in doing so, she lost me, and ultimately she lost herself. I could feel the weight of all this inside me, but I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't the man who would let his family walk all over him. This was my turning point, my chance to rebuild my life from the ground up. I had given so much to others, to my family, and now it was time to give something to myself. I thought about my son, his guilt, his inner turmoil. It was obvious. He was torn between the woman he had married and the father who had once been his role model. He wasn't sure where his loyalty lay, and that was a heavy burden to carry. He had to choose between love and duty, between what was easy and what was right. But I couldn't make that decision for him. It was something he had to figure out on his own. I just hoped that when he did, he would be strong enough to choose the right path. In the days that followed, I reflected on all of this, finding a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't just the decision to walk away from them, it was the realization that I had finally taken control of my own life. I had the power to heal, to move beyond the past, and to rebuild my future without the weight of their expectations. Then, as I sat in the quiet of my new, smaller home, one I had chosen for its simplicity and peace, I received a call from my son. My heart tightened in my chest as I answered, unsure of what to expect. "Dad, I know things are messed up right now." His voice trembled through the phone. "But I'm sorry. I've been an idiot. I've been living a lie, and I don't want to do that anymore. I want to make it right, not just with you, but with myself." I held the phone to my ear, listening to him pour out his guilt, his regret. For the first time in a long time, I heard sincerity in his voice. But was it enough? Was I ready to forgive him? Or was it too late? "Son," I began slowly, "I can't fix this for you. You have to fix it yourself. But I'll give you this. You've got a chance. You've got a chance to change, to do things right, but you've got to do it on your own." "I will, Dad," he said, his voice breaking. "I promise I'll make things right." I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, a mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to forgive him and bring him back into my life. But the other part of me, the part that had fought for years to hold on to this family, knew that I couldn't just let the past go without thinking it through. The conversation ended with no promises, no guarantees. Just a quiet acknowledgement that things had changed, and maybe, just maybe, there was room for reconciliation. After hanging up, I stood at the window, staring out into the distance. There was a weight in my chest, a deep ache that reminded me of all that had been lost. But there was also a flicker of hope, a spark that maybe things could get better. I couldn't undo what had happened, but I could move forward. Then, just as I started to feel some peace, the phone rang again. This time, it was the lawyer. "Mr. Johnson, there's something you need to know." His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "I've just come across a document that changes things. It seems there's another part of the inheritance, a trust your wife set up. It's substantial, and it's not what you think." My heart skipped a beat. More secrets. More lies. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice sharp. The lawyer hesitated. "It's something you'll need to come to the office to see in person. I'm sorry to say, but this could change everything." I stared at the phone in my hand, unsure of what to think. Was there yet another twist in this long, exhausting saga? Or was this the final chapter in a story I thought I knew? I stood there frozen as the implications of his words sank in.